Well, my wife Pam and I, who's somewhere in the audience, there she is down there, had been hoping over the last couple of months to visit the wonderful Sean Scully exhibition at the National Gallery of Art in Dublin. But we were wondering, how could we get here? Given that we live in the English Midlands, and given the distance and the expense. So thank you for flying us over. Of course, I also want to thank Dublin City Council, Lord Mayor, the Library Services, and all the organisers, sponsors and hosts of this justly celebrated prize. What a fantastic list of winners there have been up until this year. And to congratulate the Dublin IMPAC Award itself for reaching its 20th year. I know there's not a person in this audience today who does not wish it well as it looks to secure its future and its tradition of drawing attention each year to so many much-loved novels. This is a prize that looks in every nook and cranny in the world to find its winners. And of course, it's a prize which has become greatly coveted by writers everywhere. And not only because of the value of the cheque that accompanies it, but also mostly, I really hope mostly, because of the validation it provides to every book that is nominated or longlisted or shortlisted or declared the lucky winner. This is a prize that breathes hope into novelists and also gives new leases of life to the titles that make the final cuts. So we all look forward to an expanding list of winners and to the Dublin IMPAC Awards 50th anniversary, its centenary even. Of course, I probably won't be here for that 40th anniversary, and I certainly won't be here for the 50th, although no one in this audience should look smug because none of you will be here for the centenary. And that's because, as you can tell, I am by a long chalk the oldest novelist to have won this award. My nearest contender is Alistair MacLeod, who was a stripling 65 when he was standing here with his No Great Mischief. So this has made the victory of my novel Harvest especially sweet, as I'd come to accept over recent years that it was far too late in my career to hope for such good fortune as I'm enjoying today, really enjoying today, I have to say. To tell the truth, I'd also come to accept long before I even started on Harvest that my writing life had reached a stage where it might be sensible to call a halt on it altogether, mostly because I wanted to avoid the mixture of deflation and bitterness sometimes that afflicts even the most fortunate of writers once their more prolific years have passed. Besides, like any long-term desk worker with a 45-year career in pushing pens in a dusty room, I wanted and deserved fresh air. So Harvest was always intended to be my final novel. I wrote it as a fond valediction. Indeed, the dedication on the last page was a kind of leaving note, a settling of debts. I'll read it to you, just a short part of it. I wrote, "I've enjoyed a fortunate career in books and publishing. I want to thank my wife, Pam Turton, and our children, Tom Crace and Lauren Crace, for letting me get on with the anti-social habit of writing in a happy, stimulating, and loving household. That has to be the most important thing. I then go on to thank several people that I'll mention again today, and that is my agent, David Godwin, who's been in turn my editor, my publisher, an agent, my friend, since my first published short story. And then I had the luck in a writing career to work with some wonderful editors, and the current editor I work with, Kate Harvey of Picador, is completely superb editor, brilliant reader, brilliant commentator, and someone who is a huge support to all of my quirky books. And Pam and Kate are somewhere in the audience today, so I want to thank them again out loud. It's so important for a writer to have two good homes. The one you live with, you're in with your family, and also the second for me, Pecador, which is the natural home for books like mine. It's important for all young novelists to remember, I think, that although the writing itself is usually a solitary act, supported only by your family, and not always by them, I have to say, once the manuscript is completed and accepted, the novel does not stand a chance unless it makes some friends and colleagues in the world of publishing and bookselling, and amongst critics and readers. It doesn't end with the names I've already listed. As we're in Ireland, let me mention some locals, but some locals other than my own maternal grandparents, although I'm told today by somebody sneeringly that everyone claims to be half Irish. Well, this is what I'm about to do. Many years ago, stuck in Dublin airport for an hour or so, I noticed the huge Irish literature section in the bookshop there. Some work experience joker had included every American writer with an Irish-sounding name. So I remember seeing Mary McCarthy, Eugene O'Neill, Cormac McCarthy, Flannery O'Connor, but not one single Crace. I'm more Irish than any of them. I have an O'Rourke grandmother and a grandfather called Holland, but actually he was originally a hooligan from County Cork, and for reasons that we still yet haven't fathomed, he thought that by giving himself a Dutch provenance, he'd stand better chances when he moved over to England. What, I wondered, will I have to do to get an Irish readership? Well, here are some of the answers. What would my writing profile amount to here if it weren't for the wonderful, bookish, hospitable Cormac Kinsella, who represents Picador in your country? I hope Cormac is somewhere in the audience. How well would I have done without the exposure afforded by some of the world's most relaxed literary festivals, notably for me the ones in Galway, Bantry and Listowel? Would I have been read at all if Irish writers, generous Irish writers, such as Colm Tóibín and Colm McCann, Colm McCann's also shortlisted this year, they're both IMPAC winners in the past, if those writers hadn't offered supportive quotes for covers on my books? How well would I have fared if a third column, excuse the pun, the literary column in the Irish Times, written by Eileen Battersby, had not been over the years so sensibly and constructively critical of my books, and also so encouraging? No, writing is a solitary act which needs a community of support. But its final outcome is also another largely solitary act, reading. The genius of the Dublin IMPAC Prize is that it brings those two singletons together. And the reason why it must continue its celebration of books is the fact that it values libraries and readers more than any other award in the world. By the way, I can't help but thank those two libraries who, for some reasons best noted themselves, nominated Harvest, and the readers that voted for the book at the University of Bern in Switzerland and at the Leroy Collins Leon County Public Library in Tallahassee, Florida. Where would I be without them? Not in Dublin, not going to the exhibition. And I have to thank the judges too for their kindness and their good sense, and for giving up so much of their creative and academic time. Remember, they're readers too, but of late they have had to be readers on an industrial scale. I really do hope that they came to blows when deciding the outcome, because there are at least 9 books on the shortlist well worth fighting for. Can I end on a cheesy note, please? You can't stop me. I want to thank the generosity of storytelling itself. Harvest was the product of a failed book. I've usually found that in the early stages, writing a novel is a bit like pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. All effort and little pleasure. But gradually, almost surreptitiously, The story you are telling comes to your aid. It puts its own shoulder up against the boulder. It lends its own support, the support of an ancient craft, which is wise and mischievous and generous. Before you know it, the granite boulder has become a helium balloon, disregarding gravity. It's all you can do to hang on. Now it's little effort and all pleasure. Well, that failed book I mentioned was granite all the way. I hated it. I lay late in bed each morning rather than face the blank computer screen. I finally plucked up courage to show 40,000 words, that's a full year's work, to my agent David Godwin. He suggested, well, he recommended, he insisted that I shove the novel into a padlock drawer and swallow the key. It was, at first, an unnerving blow, dispiriting. Narrative, for all its generosity, had let me down. I decided that this was a sign that I should spend more time in the garden and no more time at the desk. It was the moment for me to quit. I even said so on the Open Book programme on BBC Radio 4, making my intended retirement public and final. But within a day or two of swallowing that padlock key, the novel Harvest was gifted to me out of nowhere. It just fell on the page. It was pure helium from the first sentence, and it has proven to be the most fortunate of books. So instead of retiring from words, as I had promised, I now found myself, with the aid of this prize, eating words. Another novel is already taking shape. It's still a boulder, but I am feeling lucky. I thank you all for the luck afforded to me here today and for your validating generosity. Coming here to Dublin is always a pleasure, but this one takes the cake. Thank you very much indeed.